I'm Carol Hilcom, a member of Westminster Presbyterian Church of Detroit, and I'm also a member of the Presbytery of Detroit's Middle East Work Group and the moderator of the National Israel-Palestine Mission Network of the Presbyterian Church. Mark's answer just now to David goes straight to the question that I want to ask our three panelists. As the Middle East Work Group here in Detroit and as the Israel-Palestine Mission Network nationally, we feel pretty disconnected from other denominations. It's been hard to make those connections. Actually, Israel-Palestine Mission Network is having its annual meeting in Chicago in a couple of weeks, and we will have a couple of Lutherans and a couple of Episcopalians joining us, and we're grateful for that. But I think, as I look at the three of you, all clergy, I'm a layperson, how do we get more lay people involved in the conversations that I know that you have? I've been hanging out with Bill Gepford for the 30 years he's been here in Detroit, so I know that those conversations go on, but how do we get people connected as Episcopalians, as Lutherans, Methodists, Presbyterians, to work together instead of having these little groups over here by itself and over here by itself, because the Middle East Work Group sponsored a trip to Israel-Palestine a year or so ago, and it was a very small group, very successful, but it could have been even better by connecting with some others. How do we get together on the sale of products from Israel-Palestine? I'd like your input on how we make those connections.
Well, I think first there's a lot more going on than what any of us know. A lot of good work. The second is that we need to participate in events that are not simply our own. If we think we've got it all figured out in our ELCA thing, we're kind of blind and actually kind of dumb. And actually sometimes we are kind of blind and kind of dumb. But what we probably should do is, not always, but perhaps occasionally have these groups convene together just for a time of doing things. And also it should go beyond the Christian community and should become interfaith.
Well, I ask you this question. Look around this room. How many of you have heard this story for the first time today? No one. So all of you then have heard the story, and you know the situation and the problem. Why aren't you involved in these little groups and calling more people to come to make those little groups big groups? What I hear so often among the lay people is that I don't want to do anything to break my friendship with the Jewish friends that I have. And I wonder if, as parents raising children, and the child misbehaved, would we say to them, no, I don't want to talk too harshly or to be too honest with them because I don't want to break our relationship. It seems to me that there's a problem here, especially from the Christian point of view, how we operate under the scripture that says you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free. And it seems to me that we're afraid. We're afraid to be honest. We're afraid to speak the truth that's going to set us free to do what has to be done in terms of making the changes that need to be made. Look, folks, I've been around 57 years waiting for change, and I still have hope. I have people who send me emails very cynical, absolutely don't want to touch it. They don't think it's going to happen. they're very pessimistic, and I appreciate Mark being so open and courageous to speak what has to be spoken. And what we need to do, I think we'll make more friends by being honest, rather than being afraid of losing friends. And maybe the friends that we're losing are the ones we don't need to have as friends because we're not accomplishing anything. So that's just my experiences I've had here. When we talked to the Palestinian refugees in our classes where we taught, in my classes in Lebanon, and they told me their story. This is 5 years after the State of Israel. They said, you know, when we left in 1948, the Israeli army told us that you will be allowed to return to your homes in September of that year. And we're still sitting in refugee camps then, and they're still sitting in refugee camps today. I mean, how do we deal with that kind of propaganda and misinformation in order for people to get what they want in life? And I know Mark is the one who can speak to this better than I can. But you do say in some of your writings, you talk about bullying from the Jewish community to cut off the conversation. And I think the time in our title here says beyond dialogue is very significant. We've been dialoguing for so long now, but there hasn't been the kind of change that we would like to see, transformative change. And I think it's time that we, in our dialogues, if you want to call it interfaith, I don't care what you call it, that we speak honestly. How many in this room, when they leave here this morning, are going to go out and say, the time has come for me to tell the truth?
It's going to come to the layperson's question maybe from a slightly different angle. A year ago summer, my daughter was part of a Michigan peace team delegation to the occupied territories and spent time doing accompaniment work with Palestinian farmers and shepherds near settlements where they often get sniped at, shot at, otherwise harassed, and also was going to be present in a village called Sarah and Baleen. And as a father, I was having not really doubts about this because I was basically proud of her, but I sort of quipped, do you have to get your parents' permission to do this? And she responded without even thinking, I already have it, they baptized me. Which I thought was a brilliant answer, and an understanding of baptism as discipleship, as freedom from the power of death, and as authorizing ministry and public action in the world. And that's the baptism within the Christian tradition is the foundational order, as it were, authorization for ministry. So I'm encouraging you.
Can I just weigh in for just a minute on that? I would encourage everyone to, lay and clergy alike, but maybe clergy too, to do it from the pulpits, to go back and read the letter from the Birmingham jail, which I think just speaks very clearly today. Remember, he was writing it in response to clergy who had written to him and said, we need to keep talking, it's not time for action. And I think it was in that same letter that Reverend King said that he was more afraid of the white liberal than he was of the Ku Klux Klan in terms of getting in the way of what needed to happen. So I agree. I think the time for talking is fine, but it represents a bit of a barrier. It's become a habit that we don't have the luxury for. It's important, but it can't get in the way of action.